Like all beginnings, mine were fairly humble. It's amazing what you can do in real life, even more amazing what you can do in Football Manager. It's where it all started for me. I loved my time in Japan. It was probably the most challenging thing I've done because one of my most I'd say effective tools was taken away from me, and that was language. I literally walk into a room where no one understands anything I say. You don't have the ability to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with anybody. There needs to be another person in the room who's going to interpret your message, and you're not always 100% confident that that message is getting across in the way you want. So it was really challenging, but I loved it because it kind of helped me improve my other communication tools as a manager. It allowed me to get creative about the way I kind of conducted, whether that was meetings or training sessions, and also it gave me great belief because even without language, I could see that, my message was still getting through. It's a great country. They're very passionate about their football. Got outstanding footballers. It certainly helped me when I went to Scotland in that I knew that there was fantastic footballers there that probably people hadn't noticed because they were in Japan. So, a bit like my Football Manager experience, it allowed me to try and unearth guys who I knew were going to be fantastic footballers, but maybe the rest of the world didn't know about it. Where you're from that's your football club, and they're very strong on that. And I've loved that, and seeing how even in the time I was there, how much it's grown. With clubs from every level, J3, J2, J1, challenging, very quickly, going up the divisions and challenging for titles and cups. They've got a real clear vision about what they want it to look like. They've got a plan that they've got an 100-year plan that they're sticking to. I think they're in year 30-something of it, and if you follow it, they're almost following it to a T in terms of their expansion. J3 is now grown again with addition of more clubs, and I think you'll find in the next 10, 15 years, it'll be as strong as any of the, strong European leagues, particularly with the talent coming through. I think what probably held back the floodgates opening for the talent they had was a little bit of people being unsure how players from that side of the world would adjust culturally over here, and also a little bit of a reluctance from, I think, Japanese players to embrace the fact that, they had to leave their shores and go into a new culture, to a country abroad. But I think what's happened since then is, I certainly felt when I was there, young Japanese players, are already understanding that, that they want to make this move, so they prepare themselves for it, whether that's learning language, English, Spanish, Italian, whatever it is, understanding the cultures they're going to. And, you've seen the impact that Mitoma has had at Brighton, and the Bundesliga has been really strong on taking players from Japan in particular and providing they've had real successful careers. You look at their national team over the last 12, 18 months, they're starting to get some really strong results and performance against just about any country in the world. If they continue to develop the league and develop their footballers the way they are, they'll be a top 10 nation within the next 10 years, 15 years at the longest, I think, just with the way I see the trajectory of football in Japan going, both from an individual level but also a collective level. When you win the league and you're champions after a 14, 15-year absence, there's a lot of players, some are still there. I'll always have a bond with, Kibo, who's the captain of the club. When I got there, he was very much the junior member, but he's been there since he was a kid. There's photos of him on the wall being a junior at Yokohama, and he grew up adoring the club. We spoke about, playing for your hometown club. Well, he's the epitome of that, and now he's captain. He's won a couple of championships. I love him fullbacks. I had Kenny Matsubara, who was always good for a goal. He'd be brilliant in a fantasy and a Football Manager because he doesn't play like a conventional fullback. There were young men that were just absolutely disciplined in becoming who they want to be. There was never any questioning of me, of my methods or anything. They wanted to be successful and have learnt that you need to respect your elders, and then within that context also seeing that they had their own ways of preparing themselves for games, and they had their own ways of doing things after training that they needed to do that I hadn't seen before. And, a lot of the staff that I was working with hadn't seen before, but we allowed it to happen. The beauty for me is that I've experienced it all, and it's made me kind of, like I said, not just a better football manager, I think a better person. It's probably not too long after it sort of came out, and then around that time I was also working with the national teams, and national team football is really great, but you get a lot of downtime in between. So once I started, fair to say, like most people, it was you're all in. I love the concept, and very similar to kind of what I was doing at the time, but also an extension of that because you had a little bit of freedom in the game to kind of do things that in real life doesn't allow you to do. Oh, look, I think like most, I love taking the small club all the way to the highest possible levels. And I guess the one for me was Southend United. The only reason I picked them was because they were the closest I could find to South Melbourne, the club I grew up and played with. So the South was in the name, and took them all the way to a Champions League. And my greatest moment, but also my biggest heartbreak, is they sacked me 6 months later when I was expecting a statue. So just goes to show. I took on the big clubs as well, but that kind of success wasn't as fulfilling. But then it was about trying to sort of find the next star, and I was pretty aggressive transfer wise. I didn't sit on players for too long and was constantly moving around. So I had a fair few successes. I went down the Freddie Adu rabbit hole, which everyone does, and he was unbelievable. But also because of my background, I was kind of national youth team manager. I went to 6 World Youth Cups. There was a lot of young players I saw when they were 17 and 18, and they were popping up on Football Manager and as young talent, and I love grabbing hold of them, people like Carlos Vela and others, and taking them all the way to the top. With Football Manager, you saw the effect that data had, and I think in many respects it was a precursor to kind of where recruitment and transfer dealings went to. So, I love that. Just having such a massive database of players, at the touch of a finger, and it pretty much has become real life now. When you're talking about as a real life manager trying to recruit players, that's your starting point. And football's evolved over time, but it's always been about my team having the ascendancy in terms of having more of the ball, but also, more of the ball in the attacking half. So it's how can I create a tactical formation and a system that allows my team to have more of the ball in the attacking half of the opposition. So it wasn't just about keeping possession. It was about saying, well, now can we create more chances in the opposition? Can we play the game in the opposition half? And, even today, when I'm on the touchline, I just doesn't sit well with me when the opposition have the ball, and it certainly doesn't sit well with me when they have the ball in our defensive half. So that's kind of the foundations of sort of every system that I've had along the way. It's a bit like, the reason people sort of play a game like Football Manager, it takes them into this world that, they dream about. And it's the same with footballers. I kind of try and paint the picture that we're going to play football that they wanted to play when they were kids. When you're out in the street or out in the, in the park, and you've got the shirts down for the goalposts and you're playing 5v5, you're not worried about tactics or playing zonal or staying off the opposition. You just want the ball and you just want to play. A lot of what we do and what I do is trying to feed into that part of every footballer to say, well, let's take it back to where it all started and create a system and like I said, a way of playing that allows them to do the things they love to do. Every footballer loves to do: have the ball, be creative, score goals, be exciting. There's a lot of hard work that goes into that. There's a lot of discipline that goes into that. But most players respond because we train, all the time with that intent in mind that, our training's around, well, let's get on the ball and try and create something special. So, that's kind of what underpins everything we do. Champions League football is just unrelenting. It's fantastic. It's confronting. It challenges you in every way. You go into sometimes the most hostile of environments, facing the best footballers on the planet, with zero hope of achieving anything but believing that you can. So it's also very addictive. You want to go back and do it again and again, and it is the sort of the pinnacle of club football. I'd just go hard on it. Don't play safe in any time. The reality is you can win a Champions League and get sacked. I've seen that. So don't be afraid of anything. Just whatever you got in your mind, your wildest sort of dreams and aspirations, go for them. Do it in the most radical possible way, because even success doesn't guarantee you don't get the sack.